So today I want to dig into my roots and go to the Bible. Yeah, you heard that right here. I grew up very Christian. And I think for a lot of autistic people growing up in white America as Christian, this is both a very traumatizing experience because you take everything very literally. You're already existential and someone's telling you if you don't say this prayer right now, you're gonna go to hell, and there's all these rules and you're like, oh my god, I love rules, but then you're like, you lose sight of your intuition. There are these amazing things that our bodies tell us, an amazing sensitivity, especially as a child, that you feel, and I think that sensitivity lives inside each and every one of us. But for a lot of people, growing up means progressively ignoring that sensitivity, that vitality, that, if we're going to talk about Audre Lorde, that eroticism, that vital, deep feeling. Especially with technology, especially with, the access to drugs and alcohol. Oh my god, do you hear it, guys? Do you hear the Christian in me? But for a while, I took a hiatus, I was so scared because there were all these things that I'd grown up believing, and I didn't know how to reconcile that with the person that I was becoming. And it was terrifying because unraveling that meant unraveling, how I had framed my identity. It meant unraveling my shame. It meant unraveling my relationship from my neglectful and abusive family. And I do not say that lightly. I do not say it was easy. I do not say I wish this pain upon anyone else, but also I hold a sense of self that I could not have held if I'd continued living the way that I was living, that required me to constantly suppress my deepest feelings, my deepest desires, constantly be in these really empty and false relations with people, constantly be around people who could not truly love me and desire for my greater good because they didn't know how to love themselves, But I was talking in class the other day, and we were talking about Uses of the Erotic by Audre Lorde. Great read. Amazing. If you're not used to kind of reading text like that, you might be like, what is she saying? But no, trust me. But I think that honestly, reading it, I remember reading it a few years ago and I didn't fully understand it. I was with it, but I didn't understand it. And I think it's because there's a difference between understanding and feeling. You can understand something conceptually. You can wish that you believed it. And I think I felt this way sometimes with Christianity, where I was like, well, I don't know if I actually believe it. And I didn't realize a lot of people are in Christianity just for the community, They don't really take all this stuff so seriously. They have, oh my god, a sense of self? Whoa, what's that? Now I know. But no, I did not know. I was taking all of this so seriously, so literally, so deeply. Thinking about it, contemplating it, trying to understand my place in the world and understand my beliefs. I was contemplating if evolution was real, y'all. Like, it went deep. I was like, Noah's Ark. I was looking up articles. There was this article that was like, this is a while back. I feel like there wasn't as much, stuff now. You can go on TikTok and go on YouTube Shorts now. You get a whole bunch of stuff, but I was doing research, in elementary school. I'm like, did Noah's Ark happen? Was evolution real? And there was this one that was like, we know that Noah's Ark happened because the oil reserves are the animal. I don't even know, y'all. It was crazy. It was crazy, but you're getting all these different messages. And not only that, but if you're in the type of family I was in, if you don't believe, if you ask too many questions, you risk losing the crumbs of love that you depend on to survive. You risk losing the sense of, whatever sense of community or belonging that you struggle to fit into because you don't really fit. Like, I'm a chink in the middle of the suburbs. I don't really fit. And by the way, y'all, heads up, if you're not Chinese, that is a slur. I'm reclaiming it. I don't care. what anyone says. I am proud of who I am and I love myself. But if you're not Chinese, don't say this to me, please. Don't say this to anyone. Respect. But yeah, I was talking in my class with the erotic, and we were talking about like what song reminded us, what was the first song that we heard, you know, growing up that like really like felt like love to us, that reminded us love, like gave us an idea of what love was. And I was like, ooh, and I couldn't help but go back to the church because I grew up listening to contemporary Christian music, you know, Hillsongs United, Toby Mac, Big Daddy Weave. Come on, y'all, like. For King and Country, I forget. I went to Christian concert growing up. You know, I watched God's Not Dead. Like I did all these things. And I was talking about this and I realized there is something so deeply feeling to singing these songs together. You know, you feel it in your chest. I used to close my eyes and kind of sway. And when you're listening to music, you can do that type of shit, you know? You're not just... I feel like so often autistic people have such a deep sensitivity and awareness of our sensuality, of our eroticism, but we're constantly forced to repress it, constantly forced to repress this deep joy that we have just in living life and seeing these patterns. You know, you can look at like a single leaf and it's just mesmerizing. You know what I mean? But when you're constantly on go, trying to survive, you don't have the space and energy to really breathe and just enjoy all that which, you know, call it God, call it the universe, call it the world, call it Mother Earth, call it the spirit, whatever you want to call it. All that is so abundant here for us. The sunlight on your face, the grass under your feet. You know, I can hear the sounds of leaves in the wind right now. I hear crickets at night. And then I'm so honored to be able to just watch the passing of time through the seasons, to see the leaves changing color. It's getting a little cooler. Like, it just brings me so much joy just to experience the world and life. It's magical, and I think there is something to be said for the suburbs, that it's so quiet. And I grew up in Georgia, so the forest is right there, you know, and it's, you know, is it a lifestyle that is good for the environment? Is it a lifestyle that benefits all the people? But, you know, no. No, is it sometimes mind-numbingly empty, and is it hard to develop a sense of self? Yes, but I could sit on my front porch in the summer, I could see dragonflies go by, you know, I could play in the red clay, I could go on a walk in my backyard, I could walk from my backyard to the pool. What a privilege, you know, how beautiful. I would lay on the grass and watch the clouds move, and then things are so quiet. It's like, you know, it's not until I got to college I realized how fast other people's lives move. It's like, I said this before, but it's like you live in the city. I understand now. You have to move quick, you know. There is money that you must earn. There are places to be, and then slowing down, there's too much going on. You're gonna go crazy. It keeps you moving, you know, and then you have such a connection to the vitality, I think, of community when you live in a city, to other people's lives, just these little windows constantly. You're usually getting a more international perspective. You're usually able to then, you know, have a stronger sense of culture, a stronger sense of place. But there's too much noise, too much going on. There's not the time and space to just sit, listen, feel, and experience. You know, I loved going outside when it rained. I loved feeling the rain on my skin. I loved, you know, even just, you know, when we pray, holding hands. This is ooh. Like, they've done studies showing how spiritual music literally, like, makes people feel things that then, like, can make them more wanting to believe in something, or just, you look at other religions too, or other spiritual practice. Look at ragas in Hindustani or Carnatic music and the effect on health that has, being in a community where you feel like there's shared values. I think that's part of why, losing that and losing that sense of self is so devastating, because, it's like, well, what do I believe? I don't know. Does it sound like I was in a cult? Maybe. Deprogramming from the cult. Crazy. But one thing we were talking about in our class is how kind of oftentimes our society, instead of really allowing space for the erotic in all forms of living and all forms of life, the deep feeling that comes with doing work that just is deeply satisfying, that brings you, it's not about the product, it's about the process. My art teacher just always say that, and sometimes it would piss me off. Not really piss me off, but it's just like, I don't know what that means, but it's like, the things you do, the jobs you have, the places you go, the people you talk to, are you enjoying that? And then, are you deeply enjoying that? Is it just a little hit of dopamine, a little bit here, a little vent, a little oh, I get a little paycheck, or are you there fully in your body and feeling it, and like, oh, like I had the opportunity to do just very brief farm work this summer, and I was out there and I had the shovel and I was with someone, and just a beautiful light of a man. That was a crazy statement. Just a lovely soul. Lovely man. And I was digging, and then it started raining, and I kept digging, and it just felt so good. Do you know what I mean? Like, I spent years, laboring in homework and laboring in school and learning how to be a good student. But I wasn't learning how to be a human. I wasn't learning how to be human. I was actually actively being taught how to repress my humanness. Don't be so loud, Follow the rules, stand in line, don't touch the wall. Well, touching the wall in a school is the best part, like the texture of it. Come on, y'all. I had to eat at a certain time, so I'd be hungry all the time. You couldn't just go to the bathroom, you had to ask for permission to go to the bathroom. It's so, like, repressive. You can't go outside, like, you're inside for like 6-8 hours a day. Like, I am meant to be outside. I am meant to be with the trees. I am meant to be with water. Have you seen the way light falls on water? I love it. It's so beautiful. Like, I'm meant to be in the ocean. I'm meant to be, eating a mango, eating fruit, eating food that nourishes my body. Oh, drinking water. Just a cool glass of water, sitting outside on the porch. Come on. A cup of tea, the way the heat fills your chest. When was the last time you did something that filled you with this erotic sort of joy and pleasure and just satisfaction? And what we were talking about in class is how oftentimes our society, instead of allowing us to be present in our full erotic selves all the time and to tap into our full erotic power, into that deep sense of intuition we naturally hold as humans, especially women folk. I like that. I feel like a woman folk in a sense. Like, I don't know if I fully feel like a woman, but I feel like a woman folk. I feel like, growing up as a girl, like growing up, as a woman in some ways, that influences me so much. And I think being queer, being trans, being not white in this society, there's complications to it, there's complexities to it, but, for a bit I was running away from it, but now I'm like, no, there's something valuable here. There's something valuable listening to my body, listening to my, cycle, listening to, I think this almost like, I think about a matrilineal, like, ancestry that although I don't know her, I am the daughter of a woman, and she is the daughter of a woman, and I don't know, there's this very deep feeling I feel connected to when I think about that. And for a while, I think I was taught to feel fear. I was taught to be scared, taught to constantly fear going outside, talking to strangers, talking to men, all these things, purity culture. Taught to fear myself, essentially, to fear my womanness, fear my femaleness, fear these parts of myself that society wants to commodify, objectify, blah, 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 exploit, whatever. But I realized I am human. I am human. Any of us could die any day. Any of us could have any, tragedies occur to us, and some of us have already had that happen, It's like, I think especially in the white, suburban, Western world, there's such a strong sense of fear. Fear and shame, I think, guides so many people's decisions, and it's like, when you're so afraid and you're so full of shame, you don't feel, you can't tap into that erotic power, you can't tap into your fullest self, you can't tap into your those deepest feelings. Because you're constantly in survival mode. You're just trying to survive, even though on the outside it's like, you have $1 million house. You have 4 cars. It's like, it's insane. It's crazy. It's crazy. But that's what they do to you. And then, you're constantly married to your job. Why are you paying someone to take care of your children? Do you know how valuable your life is? Do you know how valuable your presence is? Do you know how sacred your energy and soul is? Why are you spending time with people you don't like? Why are you spending time not being your fullest, most authentic self, or learning how to get there? But society tends to funnel the erotic into sex, into relationships, especially heterosexual relationships, but I see this with queer people too. It's like, I just want a girlfriend, I just want a boyfriend, No, I think you want more than that. I think you want more than that. I think you are worth more than that. And I think that if we really get quiet and we really listen to what that's saying, I think it's saying more than you are willing to admit. But that's what society tells us. All the media that I grew up with, it's like, especially for girls, boys are over here just, fucking thinking nothing in their little heads. God bless them. And some of you boys are going to be like, I was having thoughts, but it's like, what am I going to eat today? What's the meaning of life? I want to play football. I'm scared. I'm happy. I'm sad. Like normal fucking human feelings when you're not constantly being programmed to serve other people's needs, see yourself as less than, and constantly feel like you need validation from men to exist, or that you're gonna die if you walk outside. Like, let this be clear, men are humans. I said it here. Don't sue me. But what Audre Lorde talks about in uses of the erotic, and what I'm kind of getting at, is that oftentimes men, as children, they experience fear. There's the big kids. There's, you don't want to be called gay. Maybe that's changing, but I think there's still a lot of fear there, You see the fear in your parents, the fear in your dad. You see, I think even somewhat some boys and young men are experiencing or even older men are experiencing this fear of being called a creep, fear of being weird, fear of, you both desire, men are taught to desire jobs, goals, women. Women are taught to be desired. And so there's this really pernicious thing going on where that doesn't allow anyone to be fully human. That doesn't allow love to abundantly and freely flourish. And furthermore, when we live in a society wherein women are discriminated against and experience such deep traumas just of being a woman, and then oftentimes men are threatened or ostracized or experience discomfort if they truly tap into their deepest feelings, their deepest erotic feelings, their deepest Because I think any human, when you tap into that pain, when you tap into that fear, when you tap into whatever it is you are stuffing down and scared of, was it that time that you weren't chosen? Was it that time that your parents got divorced? Was it that time that, maybe it's something even bigger, maybe it's intergenerational, maybe it's, the loss of your country, loss of your childhood home, a loss of a place that you can never go back to, and that maybe a place that you're realizing never existed in the fullness that you thought it did. Your own idea that the world was good and fair, whatever it is you were grappling with. If you run away from that, how are you going to empathize with other people? How are you going to relate to other people? Is it just going to be, here's my baggage, you sort that out. You deal with that. Or is it going to be transactional? It's going to be, well, I'm not going to let you love all of me, but you can have these pieces that I think are good enough for you to see. But I'm going to feel really alone sometimes because I'm actually not letting myself be seen and held. What is it? Is it going to be this, I think I've seen this online, this kind of like a lot of men are fine with this tolerable level of unhappiness. They'll be with women who are like so desperate for affection and care and love. Sometimes affection and care and love that no one can give you, that you have to give yourself. And once you give yourself that love, affection, and care, you're really like, whoa, I don't need to be with this man. Like, I was just trying to use him to fill this void that really only I can fill. And once I have that, self-respect and sense of self, it's like, whoa, we got nothing in common. This is just a man in my bed. But it's because we are taught to funnel those deepest feelings, deepest desires, deepest eroticism into romance, into religion, into spirituality. That's when we're allowed to feel. That's when we're allowed to, have these big questions about the world. That's when we're allowed to, hold each other's hands and feel together along these various scripts and norms. Even protest. I went to a protest for the first time when I moved up north, and I remember thinking in my head, this reminds me of church. And I think I told a few people that, and they were like, what are you talking about? And I didn't understand. I didn't understand for a while. But then I was like, oh my God, it's because it's that group erotic feeling of we're here together. We are here for a joint purpose over joint values. And we are singing or chanting together, moving together, something bigger than yourself. But also I think for me there's this fear because with protests it feels sometimes like there's not space for the nuance of my beliefs and feelings. It's all about let's rally, let's do this, like sometimes I feel like almost sometimes people, it's about numbers to them. It's like, how can we get more people, how can we get more bodies? And like it feels really dehumanizing to me. And the rhetoric reminds me of church in like a bad way, that like if I didn't agree or didn't believe a certain way, if I'm not as aggressive about it, that it's like going against the flow, like going against, I don't know, again, it's taking things very literally too. It's a whole thing, but I think that's what I was getting at, is that there's just eroticism there. There's this eroticism that we don't often let ourselves tap into, And I think that's also why people really can go into these extremist groups, go into these cults, because they're so desperate looking for something to fill that kind of void in their life that has really been stripped of genuine meaning and pleasure, And so moving to the Bible verses that I want to bring up, which also I'm speaking very much to my specific experience of Christianity. You do you feel whatever you feel, girly, like that's for you. And I also want to point to the way in which I think Christianity tends to take on the values of a society, take on the values of a people, and also mesh with their own religious beliefs. And so if we look into American history, Christianity was often used to say that slavery was okay. Christianity was forced upon enslaved people. Christianity has also been used in so many different colonial contexts, forcing indigenous people to convert to Christianity. But then you see that then this cool thing happens where the people take that as a tool and they use it for their own freedom. This thing that was forced upon them and tried to use to shackle them, they then use to free themselves. And so, for instance, we look at David Walker's The Appeal, which, I don't know why I didn't read this until I got to college. Amazing writing. David Walker's The Appeal. He's a free black man. This was published in 1830, maybe 1829. Like, he's reading it to an assembly of black men, and he says at the beginning of it, he doesn't just say black men, he says, my dearly beloved brethren and fellow citizens, this appeal, it caused up so much trouble. It's caused up so much turmoil. You get caught reading it. You know how much trouble you can get into? Because what does it mean in 1830 to be speaking to black people and calling them citizens? But he uses Christianity as a way to invoke their own freedom. He says, it will be recollected that I, in the first edition of my appeal, promised to demonstrate in the course of which, to the satisfaction of the most incredulous mind, that we colored people of these United States are the most wretched, degraded, and abject set of beings that ever lived since the world began, down to the present day, and that the white Christians of America who hold us in slavery, or more properly speaking, pretenders to Christianity, treat us more cruel and barbarous than any heathen nation did any people whom it had subjected or reduced to the same condition, and that the Americans, who are, notwithstanding looking for the millennial day, have us. All I ask is for a candid and careful perusal of this third and last edition of my appeal, where the world may see that we, the blacks or colored people, are treated more cruel by the white Christians of America than devils themselves ever treated a set of men, women, and children on this earth. Ooh. Do you hear how scathing that is? He talks about the Israelites coming free. He talks about, this hypocrisy in Christianity, which I think people talk a lot about today. If you look at the book Radical by David Platt, it's called Radical, Taking Back Your Faith from the American Dream. I read this when I was younger, it gets a little crazy. But I think the part that I still agree with is this idea that oftentimes American Christians give into this consumerism, this, trying to get this quote-unquote American dream, which, don't even get me started on the American dream, but why are we spending millions of dollars on these fancy churches, Why are we so worried about, our kids getting into these fancy colleges and all these things that don't matter to the soul? It's like just this crazy, like, consumerist, capitalist culture that you really see in a lot of suburban Christian spaces that doesn't speak to what Christianity is. And so when I talk about white Christianity and how it has complicatedly affected me, I think I want to point to the fact that white Christianity in America has always been a tool of oppression and racial oppression. But it also has been a tool of freedom. And a tool, of speaking into practice the various spiritual practices and religious beliefs and erotic senses of community and feeling that African people already had. A way of meeting to fight against slavery, to fight for one's freedom, and Christian spaces continue in America today to be powerful organizing spaces, powerful community spaces, places of mutual aid. But how can we bring that eroticism, that powerful, that spiritual sense, that knowledge that we are meant to be free, that we are inherently valuable? How can we bring that into our everyday? How can we bring that into existence in our world? And so I also want to do this another David Walker quote, because I feel like, he says, "The Americans may be as vigilant as they please, but they cannot be vigilant enough for the Lord. Neither can they hide themselves, or he will not find and bring them out." Like, 1830, y'all. Come on, y'all. Where is this confidence in ourselves today? Where is this? Where is our hope? Where is our feeling? And then I just wanted to add the Bible quotes to back up what I was saying about, consumerism, capitalism, and all of this. There's, if we're going to go to Matthew 19:23, "Truly I tell you, it is harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven." It's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. "Again, I tell you, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven." Which a lot of times people go to the verse, "With man this is impossible, with God all things are possible," because that's like, with God all things are possible. Well, but no, let's talk about it. It is hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Ooh. And then the other verse that I do love, it just came to me the other day, this is in Luke 12:29, actually 28. Actually, I'm just gonna read the whole thing, because this is kind of fire, y'all. Like, I was realizing, like, a lot of the Bible is poetry, analogy, metaphor. Like, it does speak to something very deep in my core. And if you look at, Rumi's verses and their connection to Islam or other religious traditions, you look at Sufism, if you look at, various religious texts, there's something really valuable here. And I think evangelicism in our society today really dilutes that. It really dilutes that. And it's hard because sometimes you meet Christians and you can tell, like, they have this connection to something that feels deep or erotic or meaningful, and that's really powerful. But then when it comes with wrapped in all these forms of oppression, it's like, god damn, like, I just why why? Oh, but let me read. Therefore, I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink. Actually, I love eating and drinking good food. I take it too late. Or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or gather into barns, and yet the Heavenly Father, your Heavenly Father, feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to his life? And why do you worry about clothes? Consider how the lilies of the field grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his glory was adorned like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, will he not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Therefore do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the Gentiles strive after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Today has enough trouble of its own. So true. So true. And so I, taking it very literally, was like, oh, I'm worrying. I should stop worrying. I'm a bad. Because also American culture, good, bad, guilt and all this stuff. No. What I take from this, what I think about this is you, in and of your existence, are beautiful and valuable and worthy of existing in your fullness, and that life happens now in the present moment. And so yes, we can have goals, yes, we can have dreams, but back to the idea of being a woman, we are mortal, we are vulnerable. We cannot control so much in life, and I think the suburbs and comfort culture and consumerism and, trying to buy your identity through clothing, it's like, it gives you this false sense of control. But the truth is, we don't have that. And so many people, know that very deeply. And know that very deeply in their history, know that very deeply in their body. And sometimes it's terrifying, but it's terrifying when that's what you are depending your identity on. That's what you are depending your idea of happiness on. That's what you're depending your value on. These things that don't matter, Also, I love, consider how the lilies of the field grow. They do not labor or spin. I love thinking about this idea that we appreciate nature just for growing, just for existing, just for blossoming, just for being. Why do we not appreciate one another like that? Why do we not appreciate one another just for existing and growing into the fullest versions of ourselves? When you let your light shine, it lights up rooms, and you are not a cup to be poured. Stop pouring into people. Stop laboring. You are full just for yourself. You light up just for yourself. The fact that we can see your light and appreciate that is a blessing. Your existence in and of itself is a blessing, is a miracle. And as I often do, you can hear me tip-top typing on my keyboard. I'm going to read an Adrienne Marie Brown quote. And I think I'm going to be thinking about Audre Lorde uses of the erotic for a while. But I think if a lot of this is confusing, if you're like, I feel you, but I don't really feel you. I get you, but I don't really know what you're saying. I think tap into play. Think about what you did as a child that brought you so much joy. Try that out. There's a lot going on right now. And there's always going to be a lot going on. Think about World War I. Think about World War II. Those motherfuckers had a lot going on. And I think that's the thing about life is you live, you die. And a lot happens in between. You're born, you die. People around you die. People get sick. And I feel like we've become so insulated from that which really matters in life. Human relation, nature, love, hope, our souls, our spirits, our joy, our feeling. Ugh. Adrienne Maree Brown, Emergent Strategy, Shaping Change, Changing Worlds. Do you already know that your existence, who and how you are, is in and of itself a contribution to the people and place around you? Not after or because you do some particular thing, but simply the miracle of your life. And that the people around you and the places have contributions as well. Do you understand that your quality of life and your survival are tied to how authentic and generous the connections are between you and the people and place you live with and in? Are you actively practicing generosity and vulnerability in order to make the connections between you and others clear, open, available, durable? Generosity here means giving of what you have without strings or expectations attached. Vulnerability means showing your needs. And I think, first, what I would say is this is also, I think part of this is really developing your sense of self. Understanding your existence. It's like when people want to take things from us, when it feels like the world's taking everything from you, or that you're losing everything that you thought you knew, what do you hold on to? When you're in the most inhumane situation, when you are being faced with violence or the threat of violence, what do you hold on to? What do you hold on to when you have nothing? If there was $0 in your bank account right now, what do you have to hold on to? What gets you through? And I think when you talk to people who have been through some of the most inhumane situations and they survived, sometimes you understand that, without all the clothes, without all the money, without all the technology, without all the comfort, without all the quiet in your suburbs and all these things, it's like you have yourself. You have your joy. You have your self-knowledge. You have your education. You have the knowledge that you are inherently free. You have the wisdom of your ancestors and the power of them inside of you. You have your connection to the land. These things matter. And I think we are getting distracted from them, getting distracted from our most erotic power, our strongest power. It's like we're constantly being told that there are all these problems that we need to fight, but what are we fighting for? And more importantly, what are we loving? Who are we loving? I think fighting without love is just self-degradation. Like, you are gonna burn out so fast if you are treating yourself as a match and not a light. And so, my dear, shine bright. Think in decades, think in generations, but also exist today, feel today, and may love fill your heart. Amen.